What happens when 20 teams are chasing the same player? How do you convince a veteran with trade protection that your rebuilding project is worth betting his career on? And when do you know it's time to stop being patient and pull the trigger on the move that could define your season? Welcome back, folks. It's Thursday, January 8th, 2026, and we got major confirmation on what the Montreal Canadiens are targeting at the trade deadline. According to reports from Mark Eason and Pierre Lebrun at TSN, Blake Coleman is officially high on Montreal's list. But here's where this story gets absolutely fascinating. He's not alone. Kent Hughes has identified a very specific profile for his next acquisition, and he's willing to cast a wide net to find it. The Canadiens are looking for a middle six forward who brings a rare combination: extreme physicality and the ability to score goals. That's not an easy player to find. Most guys who throw hits don't score. Most guys who score don't throw hits. Finding someone who does both at an elite level, that's like finding a needle in a haystack. And that search has expanded beyond just Blake Coleman. We're now hearing that Kiefer Sherwood remains a strong option as a pure energy play. And in a surprising revelation, sources are mentioning Alex Tuch as the dream target if he becomes available. Let's break down each of these options, because they represent three completely different approaches to solving the same problem. Blake Coleman is a favorite, and it's easy to see why. He's the playoff warrior we've been talking about. 2 Stanley Cup rings, elite penalty killer, physical presence, clutch goal scorer. He's exactly what Montreal needs to add toughness and depth to their lineup. But here's the complication. 20 teams have inquired about Blake Coleman. 20. That's not a trade negotiation. That's an auction. And in an auction, the price gets driven up fast. Calgary knows they've got a valuable asset, and they're going to squeeze every last bit of value out of him. The advantage Coleman has over other options is his contract. He's not just a rental. He's got another year left on his deal after this season. That means you're not just getting him for a playoff push. You're getting him for next year, too. That's huge for a team like Montreal that's building something sustainable. But there are 2 major obstacles. First, the price is going to be steep. When you've got 20 teams competing for the same player, you have to be willing to outbid everyone else. That might mean giving up a higher draft pick than Hughes want to part with, or including a prospect he'd prefer to keep. Second, Coleman has a no-trade list. He has control over where he goes. Montreal needs to convince him that they're a legitimate playoff team, that the young core is ready to compete. That coming to Montreal is worth waiving his trade protection for. That's not a guarantee, especially when he might have offers from teams with more established playoff pedigrees. Now let's talk about Kiefer Sherwood, because this is the high-risk, high-reward option. Sherwood is an absolute maniac on the ice. He's led the league in hits in previous years. He plays with reckless abandon, throwing his body around like he's got a death wish. He's pure energy, pure intensity, the kind of player who changes the entire complexion of a game just by stepping on the ice. For a Canadiens team that sometimes lacks that edge, that physicality, that willingness to make opponents pay a price, Sherwood would be transformative. He'd instantly become one of the most popular players in the building. The Bell Center crowd would go absolutely insane every time he delivered a crushing hit. But here's the problem. He's a rental. His contract expires at the end of the season. So if Kent Hughes trades a second-round pick for Sherwood, he's betting that Montreal makes a deep playoff run, and that those few months of Sherwood services are worth giving up a draft pick that could turn into a long-term piece. According to the reports, Hughes is hesitant about that. He doesn't want to give up assets for a short-term rental, especially if there's uncertainty about whether Montreal can get past the first round. That's smart, disciplined thinking. It's the same philosophy that's guided this entire rebuild. Don't mortgage the future for short-term gains unless you're absolutely certain it's worth it. And then there's Alex Tuch. Oh man, this is where things get really interesting. The report mentions that if Tuch becomes available, Montreal will be first in line. And it's easy to see why this will be the dream scenario. Tuch is a legitimate power forward. 6'4", over 200 pounds, can score 30 goals, plays a physical game, and has the skill to play in a top 6 role. He's from Syracuse, not far from Montreal. He grew up a Sabres fan, but the connection to the region is there. And most importantly, he's exactly the kind of player who would fit perfectly on Nick Suzuki's wing. Imagine a line with Suzuki centering Tuch and Cole Caulfield. You've got skill, you've got size, you've got scoring ability, you've got physicality. That's a legitimate top line that can compete with anyone in the league. But here's the catch. Tuch would cost a fortune. We're talking A-plus prospects. We're talking multiple high draft picks. We're talking the kind of package that would make Hughes think long and hard about whether it's worth it. Tuch is under contract long-term. So you're not just getting a rental. You're making a multi-year commitment. But the price would be steep. The question is, does Buffalo make him available? Are they ready to admit this season is lost and start selling? Or do they hold on to their core pieces and try to build around them? That's the wild card in this whole scenario. So we got 3 options, 3 different price points, 3 different levels of commitment. Coleman is a balanced choice. Proven playoff performer, reasonable term, but high competition and potentially high cost. Sherwood is the energy injection, pure physicality, immediate impact, but short-term rental that might not be worth the asset cost. Tuch is a home run swing. Elite talent, long-term solution, but astronomical price tag. And here's the key detail from the report that changes everything. Montreal is not in a hurry. They want to get through the Olympic break before making any major moves. The Winter Olympics are going to pause the NHL season in February, and Hughes wants to see how his team looks after that break. Why? Because Patrick Lane and Kirby Dach should be back from injury by then. Because he'll have a better sense of whether Jacob Fowler and Jakob Dobes can handle the pressure of being the goaltending tandem. Because he'll know whether this team is truly a playoff contender or just having a hot streak. That patience is crucial. It's the difference between making a panic move in January and making a calculated, informed decision in late February or early March. Hughes wants all the information before he commits significant assets. The message to the locker room is clear. We want to add muscle and goals, but we're not going to mortgage the future for a short-term rental unless we're absolutely certain it's the right move. That's leadership. That's smart management. That's how you build a sustainable contender instead of a one-year wonder. So what happens next? Montreal continues to scout these players. They continue to have conversations with Calgary, Vancouver, Buffalo, and whoever else might have a player that fits their profile. They watch how their own roster develops over the next month. And then after the Olympic break, they make their move. Blake Coleman remains a favorite because he checks the most boxes. But if Sherwood becomes available at the right price, or if Tuch somehow hits the market, Hughes will be ready to pounce. The shopping list just got heavier. Folks, Montreal knows exactly what they need. A middle 6 forward who can throw hits and score goals. Now it's just a matter of finding the right player at the right price at the right time. What do you think? Is Blake Coleman worth the bidding war? Or should Montreal look at cheaper options like Sherwood? Would you be willing to pay the massive price for Alex Tuch if he becomes available? Should Hughes be patient and wait until after the Olympic break? Or should he strike now before the competition gets even fiercer? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button, because the trade deadline is heating up and we're going to be covering every development, every rumor, and every move as the Canadiens continue their hunt for the perfect addition.